Thanks for coming, you guys. Welcome to Unlock Your Metabolism. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Megan Barnett. I'm the co-owner of BioLounge with Jeff Grimm. I'm a clinical nutritionist, so Jeff started this years ago, and he was, for those of you that know Jeff, he was like, yeah, you should totally come practice here. That sounds great. And then we found that it was actually kind of a cool situation to have medical providers and clinical nutritionists supporting patients together. So over the years, we've grown and kept that tenet. And metabolic health has always been at the center in many ways of what Jeff does. And for those of you that don't know him, he has a large expertise in hormone health for both men and women and aging. And while culturally speaking, when we talk about metabolism, we think about our body composition. Metabolism is really the way that our body takes in nutrients, energy, right? And makes energy through our cells. So what is that factory process going on in your body when food goes in and you generate energy, and how do we make that more efficient? And Tara and I are clinical nutritionists, so our aim is always to use personalized nutrition from the nutrition side of things. And I think what we've learned over the years is there is no one size fits all. There are many reasons that cells downregulate their metabolism, everything from food to environment to the way we move our bodies, stress, sleep, all sorts of things, right? So today we have brought together some experts in the field of metabolism so we can answer your questions. So this is not a formatted talk. We're not going to present to you a bunch of data. This is an engaging conversation where we hope to be able to answer your questions. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today. First of all, I do want to say a big thank you to Tara because she organizes all of our patient education events. So this is her brainchild. And I just showed up, and so thank you for doing this. Thank you to everybody for participating, and big thank you to Eric, finally, who is back. And we love him, and he makes everything magical and wonderful here from a video, audio, and photo perspective for BioLounge, so thank you. Okay, let me introduce these lovely ladies to you. I'm going to start over here with Megan Mosley. So for those of you that have not had the privilege of meeting Megan, she is a physical therapist, but she has a specialty. Megan's a somatic therapist, an embodiment coach, and the founder of Bodywise Consulting with over 35 years of experience integrating physical therapy, trauma release, and nervous system science through the art and science of being me framework. She helps clients release trauma held in the body, cultivate safety and authentic alignment with the core truth of who they are. Her work rewires the nervous system, it's just the coolest thing, restoring regulation, wholeness, and building the foundation for optimal health and true well-being. So I think as we've learned so much more about the body, we understand that the nervous system is kind of essential to how our body is functioning and how we feel, and as it turns out, metabolism. So I'm so glad you're here to join us. Yeah, thanks, Megan. And Lee Carson, my dear friend. If you've been spammed with anything Fluorosophy, you have seen her face. She is the co-founder of Fluorosophy with me, but she has a whole life outside of Fluorosophy, as it turns out. Lee is so much of a life. Lee is the co-founder at Hyatt Strength and Wellness, a personal training gym just down the street with her husband, Jeremy Hyatt. They specialize in one-on-one strength and conditioning sessions to maximize success. And yes, she is the co-founder of Fluorosophy Soluble Fiber Blends, where she serves as the CEO. And much like Tara with this event tonight, she makes everything at Fluorosophy happen. So I get to show up and talk about the science and peace out and leave. Thank you. So she is a NASM certified personal trainer and yoga teacher who believes lean muscle and soluble fiber are key elements to optimal health and metabolism. She loves sharing ways to use strength as a catalyst and tool to live your best life. So thank you for being here. All right, let's go to Carol. Carol is one of our very own here at BioLounge. Carol is a nurse practitioner. She brings 30 years of experience as a nurse practitioner and 3 years as a certified health and wellness coach to her role at BioLounge. She is passionate about learning about her patients' unique biology and supporting their journey to optimal health and wellness, and she really, really does do that. I think Carol probably knows every one of her patients' names, dogs' names, children names, you know your people. And Carol, when Carol joined our team, we were starting to understand better GLP-1 agonists and how they work for a variety of patients. Outside of just the FDA rules and regulations, from microdosing all the way to supporting people that were having inflammatory issues and this and that. And Carol is she is a researcher, and she is thorough, and she wanted to understand the science. And so she's ended up working with a lot of our patients in the GLP-1 realm, supporting their health through that. So definitely an expert in that area. She's great for those questions, as well as all of her experience just from an overall wellness perspective. So thanks for being here, Carol. Okay, and Tara. Tara's my counterpart here. She has a master's degree in nutrition and is a certified nutrition specialist. So if you don't know what that is, so to be a certified nutrition specialist, you have to have a master's degree, and then you have to be supervised by another medical professional or nutritionist for 1,000 hours. And then you have to sit for your board exam. And so it is a long process to get there. And Tara got there this year. So congratulations. Lots and lots of work. So Tara is a functional nutritionist specializing in personalized metabolic strategies. Her approach combines functional nutrition with comprehensive lifestyle modification to create personalized solutions for her clients. As a functional medicine nutritionist, she seeks to understand the intricate connections between nutrition, biochemistry, habits, and personal health, resulting in a tailored approach for each person. And she certainly does. And for any of you that have also been seeing all of our notes about the cognitive health course, Tara built that from the ground up. So again, back to the fact that metabolism is a lot more than body composition. I think Tara now has the deepest understanding of any of us about cellular metabolism and how it affects not only how we feel in our body today, but how we age and how we function throughout life, mind, body, all the tissues. So you have a great, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit here and ask questions. You will not hear a word from me, but you have an amazing panel of experts here that can answer so many of your questions. And so some of you sent some questions in, so we'll kick off with some of those. And then it's just open conversation. And we are pretending, I can't probably say this, we're pretending we're on a talk show, just if anybody has a favorite. We're pretending we might be on the favorite, and we'll pass the mic around. And that way we can capture on audio what you guys are asking, so when we send out the video, everybody can hear you clearly, okay? All right. Are we ready? Kick off questions. Okay. To kick us off, can each of you share, and we're just going to do the line, can each of you share who you are, what you do? We kind of got through that, but how does your work connect to metabolism?
So my work, like you said, is founded in the nervous system is really the foundation of our health and well-being. And that is everything from digestion, blood pressure, sleep, immunity, inflammation, all of that. So my work is in using body-based somatic practices to regulate and what I call shift the gears down into a gear where we can really learn how to be and thrive versus survive. And it's really the foundation for metabolism, for everything else. So that's a really fun thing for me to be able to do and work in all of the realms of not just body, but how do we show up emotionally in our mental realm and in our essence, our spirit, our sense of self. So.
Okay.
Thanks, Megan.
Lee? So I get to wear two hats here. And so the first one, Hyatt Strength and Wellness, we really believe that lean muscle is the bedrock of metabolic health. Our muscular tissue is how we are literally burning the food that we eat. So everything that we do is focused on helping our members and clients really optimize that lean muscle. So we do that through a variety of lenses, and we really take a whole health perspective. So our one-on-one strength training sessions are certainly one of those vehicles, but we also address sleep, stress, nutrition, cardiovascular work, what that should look like, so that we're really optimizing that lean muscle and moving forward from there with a customized plan. Philosophy and metabolic health. Soluble fiber in the body does a lot of things, but the two that I would point out from a metabolism standpoint that are sort of like the lowest hanging fruit are really soluble fiber it boosts your satiety when you're eating, so it helps you feel fuller longer, right? Which helps you to eat less. It also helps to balance your blood sugar. So that helps with those big spikes that can cause inflammation, which over time contribute to visceral fat sort of storing around your midsection. So those are sort of the lowest hanging fruit, I think, when we think about that. But then it literally works through your entire body and boosts your gut health in terms of feeding your microbiome and detoxing properly. So one of my favorite things is the way my two companies work together is, our mitochondria are working hard in our lean muscle, and they're creating these cellular byproducts, right, when they're doing their work. And then the soluble fiber comes through and helps to carry those metabolites out of our system. So that's how I work with metabolism.
It's a good marriage.
It is a good marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tara?
Yeah, I think a lot of my work is about metabolism. So when I think about cellular health, that's metabolism. I think the best proxy for it is your energy. So I think cellular energy is reflected in how you feel on a day-to-day basis. So what I like about the work that I do is if we take care of the foundations and then kind of personalize them for a person, metabolic health kind of takes care of itself. So sometimes we're focused on weight if that's someone's goal, but if we're focused on health, usually that takes care of itself. And there's a lot of really interesting research about how mitochondrial function, which is like the micro version of like where our metabolism starts, is kind of the origin of a lot of chronic disease. So when we optimize that, we optimize our longevity and chronic disease prevention. So it's very exciting. And it really does come down to like these foundations that we all know. And part of my background too is in psychology and behavioral science, because I feel like a lot of us know what to do, it's just hard to implement it. And that's where like the personalization, there's like so many paths to health. And so that's where I think it gets really interesting to work with all you unique humans. And yeah.
Thanks, Tara. Carol?
I kind of feel like I come from a little bit different perspective because I've been in Western medicine, trained in Western medicine for 30 years. So coming from that perspective, it's very disease-focused, diagnosis-focused, and kind of knee-jerk, throw a pill at it, and very insurance-driven and based. So I did spend 22 of my years in the emergency room, which is like polar opposite of what I'm doing now. But being in that setting, it's very kind of disease management, disease focused, kind of put out the fire and then send people on their way. So what I was seeing quite a bit is a lot of people would come to the emergency room with preventable problems, but they weren't being addressed because there was just no time. And I found there was no way for me to really kind of approach that from a preventative perspective. I couldn't really address that because we were busy putting out the fire. But that's what kind of got me spun off into exploring prevention and functional medicine, which is really what we do here. So I would say that we here, and just in general in functional medicine, really are focused on prevention. And prevention is very personalized with each individual. We spend a lot of time looking at blood work and blood tests because that is kind of a clue to what's happening behind the scenes and what's happening in our systems. And our bodies are amazing and not always giving us clues that there's something that's awry until it's really awry and the wheels have fallen off the cart, and then you end up in the ER, which is when I would see people, you know. So we spend a lot of time looking at all these blood pieces to just make sure kidney is functioning well and liver is functioning well, and metabolism is really identified well with problems with blood sugar, so blood sugar dysregulation, cholesterol dysregulation, and with the advent of all these GLP-1s, like Megan had mentioned, this has been a huge new tool that we have to really help on multiple levels to normalize and regulate some of those biomarkers that are really out of whack. Part of that, part of the GLP-1s really has to do with blood sugar regulation, which of course is key, but they're also finding really big benefits in fatty liver disease reversal, people feeling better because their energy is improved, their weight is coming down to a normal level, and people just get so excited when they start to see the needle moving in a positive direction. Their lifestyle kind of changes. The GLP-1s seem to really impact food preferences. People come in and their diets are like magically changing because they're moving in the right direction with weight loss, but they're like, just those really high fat, high carby kind of foods, they just don't taste very good anymore. Even with alcohol, there's been some studies showing that there's a lot of alcohol change in preferences. People just are not that interested in alcohol anymore. So they slow down with alcohol, then liver health is improved, and it just kind of creates this really cool cycle where people are making some really impactful changes, and it's been really exciting to see. So that's been really fun too. We do have a weight loss program here that really impacts all of metabolism, but it's not just all that we do. We do all those biomarkers and all the things to kind of optimize an approach to the individual person, but it's been pretty fun and impactful.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, we just had a couple questions that were sent in. I'm going to say them, we're going to answer them, and then we're going to ask y'all to talk. Okay. All right, so one of the questions that came in is 3 meals, 5 smaller meals, relationship between digestion and metabolism. This is more than one question. I'm going to start with, it's all in one bullet point, but we're going to just break it down here. So 3 meals, 5 smaller meals. I feel like you're the person to answer this. Yes?
It's always individualized. So there would be an argument for some people to do like the 5 small meals, but I would generally say 3 meals. So why you might do 5 meals would be maybe you had your gallbladder taken out and you don't absorb fat and you can process meals better when they're smaller. For some people, when they're adapting to GLP-1s, they have, some issues with acid reflux or nausea with larger meals. So that might be a reason to space them out. But generally, having 3 square meals and not snacking has a lot of benefits. So one of them would be every time you eat, you're spiking your insulin. And so you have less insulin spikes. And when your insulin is spiked, it's really hard to lose weight, and you can be insulin resistant if that happens too much. The other reason is we have something called the migrating motor complex, and it's basically this like housekeeper wave that goes through the gut and helps you like flush everything out. Bacteria, food, helps you poop. We talk a lot about poop here. So it keeps the gut functioning well and keeps things moving. And that only really gets activated like 2 hours after you've eaten, and you need to be fasting for it to be active. And so meal spacing is one of the ways that we do that, and we help people with motility, and it helps you avoid things like SIBO and IBS. And so it's something we call like meal hygiene. So having 3 square meals, no snacking if possible. I think that can be really hard for some folks if they have like hypoglycemia or get really hungry. So I would say if you need 1 snack between lunch and dinner is normally a good time, because people are trying to work out after they eat or after work, or you just don't want to get to dinner and be starving. So that would be my general recommendation, but there's always room for variability.
And just to say, like, we throw this GLP-1 out there. What that means, those are the medicines, the semaglutide, which is Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound, the ones that have just kind of exploded on the scene since 2017. So I'm sure we see advertisements everywhere. It's everywhere, clinics everywhere. So that's when we say GLP-1, that is what we're referring to as those weight loss medications that are advertised everywhere.
Thanks, Carol. Yes, we get into our acronyms and forget that we're in acronyms. Well, I haven't asked you the rest of the questions. I thought we would start with the part 1. Okay, so I'm going to ask, this is a good follow-up to that. Does food quality or the frequency of eating actually impact metabolism? And you sort of covered that talking about blood sugar. Is there any other way that you might think of the frequency affecting metabolism? Maybe even in eating windows?
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah. Right. So I think a lot of you have heard of intermittent fasting or something called time-restricted eating. And so when we think about metabolism, there's some reasons to leverage that. I would say everyone should probably eat within a 12-hour window. When they do studies, the average American eats within a 15-hour window. And a couple of benefits to like keeping the window short, so 12 would be good, would be we actually have certain hormones earlier in the day that help us digest our food better. So we're a lot more insulin sensitive in the morning and during daylight hours. And it's really common with a lot of clients like to kind of undereat during the day and then have all their calories at night. And that's not the optimal time to have your calories. So if we can kind of front load things, that can be really helpful. The other thing that does is it just gives this kind of behavioral like buffer. You know, you don't have to necessarily count calories, but if you shorten the window, most people end up eating less. It also really positively impacts your sleep if you have like a 3-hour window between dinner and bedtime. And that can be a hard one. I think like, I don't know, we all get kind of snacky at night when we're watching TV, we want some dessert. So I think you don't necessarily have to give up that habit, but maybe just having the dessert closer to your dinner, I think would be a way to think about it.
It's my least favorite nutrition advice.
I know, it's
just
so
so you know. It's the one I hate the most.
Yep.
Do you have something to say on this topic?
No, I'm like,
okay.
okay, you have to have dessert at lunch. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Have
that's
dessert
really
at breakfast.
have dessert after your lunch, not after your dinner. That's what I have to say on
There
that
you go.
topic.
Okay, we have more questions that are regarding this, but we're going to take a little pause and we're going to see who else has questions, and we'll come back to this because we're going to get this conversation going with our audience. So, who wants the mic?
Brave souls.
Come on.
Yes.
Who has a question? Eric, you're going to be the guy. Thanks. Come on, Pete.
Right.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay.
My question is, how can I modify my diet to speed up my metabolism?
Well, this is
I
going to
want
be you,
to-
kiddo.
I have a very physical job.
Yeah.
I'm retired from my regular career, and I'm working a warehouse.
Yeah.
Sometimes 10 miles a day walking and lifting and stuff like that. And I'll lose weight, but I'm not losing around the gut.
Yeah.
And
Losing weight around the gut.
I don't eat a lot during the day.
Okay. Yeah, lots of thoughts.
Front load. Eat more during
Front
the
load
day.
your calories. Yeah.
Breakfast.
Yeah, totally. I mean, technically the best way to speed up your metabolism is to gain more muscle. So that's kind of our like metabolic furnace. So the more muscle mass that you have, the hotter your furnace is going to burn. So I would say if you're not strength training, start strength training. Once you start strength training, you want to kind of increase the protein to match that. So that would be a recommendation. The other really cool way to speed up your metabolism is something you're probably already doing. It's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and it's where we burn the most calories. So it's actually all the movement in our day that isn't formal exercise. So walking, the stuff you're doing at your job, fidgeting, talking with your hands. Like some people just naturally burn more. And when we're trying to lose weight, oftentimes that kind of goes down. So the more you can move throughout your day, which it sounds like that's not the problem.
I'm probably moving too much because sometimes I feel like
Yeah.
it takes a couple days to recover.
Yeah, I would look at protein, fiber, front loading your calories. There's a lot
In the
more.
morning, I do a vegetable protein smoothie.
Great.
And that's it.
Amazing.
If I eat in the morning, I get a little indigestion, that slows me down.
So I think this is, I want to punt this to you a little bit too, because I think there is a conversation to be had about moving and strength training and why are those different from a metabolic perspective?
Yeah. I mean, what I was going to say is to answer your question is it sounds like you're very busy, you're on your feet, you're doing a lot of NEAT is what we call it, that, non-exercise activities, but having, 2 to 3 days where you're following a specific strength training program that's designed to help build lean muscle. So that's going to be a program designed with progressive overload that's using your big muscle groups. So you're really building that lean muscle up so that you're burning more of those calories. And I know it's so easy to be moving a lot and thinking I'm walking a lot, but that progressive overload really does make a difference. And the cool thing one of the coolest things that I think is that it's so easy to measure as well. So BioLounge has one, we have one, there's an InBody. It takes literally like, I don't know, 60 seconds, and it scans your body. So the cool thing about it is you have a baseline. You see where you are with your lean muscle, you try something else for 3 months, you follow that progressive overload, and you measure again, and you're either gaining or losing lean muscle, but it allows you to see in fairly real time, like what change did I make and how did it impact my lean muscle mass, and how is that then impacting my visceral fat, which is the fat around the middle, and it tells you all of those things. And it's just really one of the pieces of data that I think, we're so fortunate to have and to be able to lean into, because it tells us pretty much real time, did the change that I made, did that make an impact? And do I want to keep doing that? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think during my job, I do lift a lot. I'm lifting cases of beer, sometimes beer kegs, sometimes just boxes of cups and
Sure.
that kind of stuff.
And
It's irregular.
That could be the case, but when we look at progressive overload, we're looking at what is your rate of perceived exertion, and we want that to be about an 8, meaning I'm doing a deadlift and I can do 8 of those. Maybe I could do 2 more, right? So it's very heavy, and it's it's like 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. So that is, it's hard to, I know kegs are really heavy, I really do, but it's like finding,
Personal expert.
it's finding the way to still have that, more measured approach. Does that make sense? And making sure that it involves, the full range of motion, right? So we want to think about our big joints, right? So we talk about a squat, probably do that with the keg, a hinge, which is a deadlift, a push and a pull, right? So those are more shoulder focused. And those are the big movements in our body where we can get the most benefit for building those muscles, because they're the big muscles.
Yep.
So, and those are the ones we want to really focus on.
Megan, you were going to say something on that.
I was just going to add to that. I completely agree with what you're saying. But just the other thought about when we think about our just alignment and how we carry ourselves just through the world, like everything is in front of us. And over time, we get into these habits when you look at studies, and you can probably speak to this around like how much of your body, of your muscle, you're actually using just in standing and functioning and moving. And so to really think about how do you maximize your sense of balance and sense of engagement and connection and core in yourself in a way that is foundational, that then you're literally kind of carrying your whole self with everything that you're doing. And it's a really different flavor than just kind of going through the day. Like when I work with people and I'm like, let's just look at your stance and then move them into a place of like maintaining a sense of balanced alignment. It's a lot more work. And then when you put that into your day, it just really, I think, just kind of carries through and bumps your metabolism. And also this leads into your nervous system and how you're feeling, how you're open and you feel strong, and the metaphors of alignment, balance, connection, strength, all of those things. So just other ways to kind of foundationally shift.
It's a good point. Yeah. It's a good point. My husband, I'm not going to say anything scientific. I'm just going to give you an anecdote here. My husband came out of the bathroom the other day and he said, "Do you know that when I stand up straight, I look extremely lean?" I said, "I've noticed." Yes, keep it up. You keep it up. I know. So we're like,
I would also like to add about the speeding up the metabolism. We always need to have a conversation, or at least think about hormones, hormone optimization. As we get older, our metabolism slows. It just does. And where we put our weight, where we gain weight, changes. So making sure that, hormones aren't for everybody, but making sure that you have a correct balance of hormones can really make an impact in terms of how you metabolize food, how you retain muscle, how you, it doesn't really like boost your metabolism, but it just supports everything around you so that you can retain the muscle when you're going to all of the trainings. Like you might go and you might be working out like crazy and then you got nothing really to show for it, but you're working really hard. Well, if your testosterone is not in a good place, you're not going to retain that. And so again, it's kind of looking at the whole person, looking at all the pieces that are contributing. optimizing them so that the metabolism is in a good shape.
And wouldn't you say that nutrition comes first? Like, we don't know what his diet is. So before any of that, I'm asking.
We don't care. Just kidding.
So I guess that's my question.
Yeah. Here, ask it into the mic so we hear it and it's recorded. Do you want to know if nutrition matters?
Oh, but what about his diet?
In my answer. Yeah, so nutrition does come first. We think about like calories in, we're getting most of that from nutrition. And there's this really cool line of research that's coming out of like evolutionary biology, where they looked at kind of energy output from exercise in hunter-gatherers. And we used to think that that was kind of infinite. Like you could burn as many calories through exercise as possible, but you really can't. It's constrained. So it's kind of this like set point. And that makes sense because we evolved in food scarce environments and we didn't want to starve if we were moving and didn't have, animals to hunt. So yeah, there's this kind of cap on it. So once you kind of reach that limit, you just start to downregulate other things in the body. So stress pathways, immune system pathways, and that's actually why exercise is really good for you. Good for stress reduction. It kind of downregulates an overactive immune system. But it's also why it's not the best thing for weight, unless you're strength training, because then you're increasing your metabolism. And there's so many other reasons to exercise, but basically weight training and NEAT are gonna be the highest leverage for weight loss, and then it's really diet.
Do you want to speak to Pete mentioned something that we sort of talked about a little bit, but the cadence of eating through the day with regards to blood sugar, triglycerides, and kind of how we store fat? Because I think that is something that, as you said earlier, a lot of us are in the habit of getting going in our day and then getting busy and eating a little bit, but not coming close to our caloric needs.
Totally.
And then having the big meal at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. So if we're eating at the end of the day, we talked about we're kind of insulin resistant at that point. So basically the glucose is going to be kind of flooded in the blood and it's not going to have anywhere to go and it gets stored as fat. Same with triglycerides. So one tool for that, if you have to have a big meal at night, would be to actually do a little gentle movement before and after. You can do like 10 squats or a little walk, and basically that causes the muscles to soak up the excess glucose. But again, when we have those insulin spikes all day, we're never going to mobilize our fat because our body is going to perceive that we're never really in a caloric deficit. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
Do you have any advice on macronutrient composition if your main meal is the end of the day? Like, how would you recommend somebody focus on fat, carbs, and protein if they're getting the majority of their calories at the end of the day versus if they're getting, the big breakfast and then the smaller meals? Do you have a different
I would try to convince them to not eat all their calories at the end of the day. Yeah. But
and if you lost that battle,
if we have to, I would focus on getting enough protein. So for you, probably at least 30 grams with dinner. And then I would focus on slower carbs. So this would be carbohydrates that have some fiber. So things like beans, vegetables. And Megan always talks about we really have to earn our carbohydrates. It's not that carbs are bad, but it's sort of this fuel for our system. And so if we're going to eat a lot of carbohydrates, we need to be moving a lot. So if you're not, it sounds like you are during the day, but those slow carbs are probably going to be better at night. So you don't go to bed with this huge glucose load. So I'd be pretty careful with that. Was there anything else?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd like to share something. It's not so much a question, but it could add to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, please.
So the way that I started eating about 6 weeks ago, I'm doing a program for myself and I'm a personal trainer, helping my clients with it as well, is macro-based. And I am eating, and this is working for me, 5 meals a day, same number of calories, same number of macros, except pre and post workout, the carbs are a little heavier. And I'm in a cut, not a build. It's recomposition of my body so that I could build muscle and lose fat at the same time. It takes time. But anyway, it's working really well. I'm adding sauerkraut to like every meal. And so before I started doing this, and I'm sure I told Carol about it when I saw her, I was getting hungry every hour. I wanted to be on the GLP-1s, and she said no. So I'm glad you did. I'm doing this myself, and I feel like this is like a natural GLP-1. So it's working really well.
It's great.
Yeah. So
Great. And that's kind of speaking to finding your magic, the thing your body needs, depending on how you move, how you sleep, where you are in your life. There's, for everything we're talking about, there's going to be something that works for where you are. And I think one of the hardest things, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but I sure have at 45 years old, it actually changes. So what used to work for me, turns out doesn't anymore. Isn't that a shocker? Yeah, you have to adapt with what is going on in your life, and not just age, what is going on in your life, And I think, maybe speak a little bit more to what you see maybe in your clients with what's going on in their life and how they have to adapt. Because I think the nervous system is so under-realized right now with how we feel, because we've normalized stress.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah,
we have. So in that, I would say that when you look at, I always ask the question, what's it like to be me? And that is an acronym for what's it like in my body? What's it like in my emotional world? What's it like in my mental realm? And then in my essence, or my sense of self. And there is, our experiences, like you're saying, they are so normalized. And how we feel in any of those realms in any moment is 100% dependent on what I call the gear of our nervous system that we're driving our lives in. And gear 1 is this kind of nickname of rest, digest, tend, befriend, if you've ever heard of that. And it's where in our bodies we function and flourish. In our emotional state, we feel fulfilled and we can have fun. In our mental realm, we have focus and flow. And in our essence, we feel free to authentically be ourselves. And that's a big piece. When we talk about safety, we hear a lot about Peter Levine's work and running from tigers, but really safety to feel like we can show up and be our authentic selves, because it's immensely stressful to go through your day and to be in this kind of, people-pleasing mode, or trying to avoid conflict, or running away from things. So all these different fight, flight, fawn, freeze, fold, those are elevated levels of our nervous system. And when that happens in our body realm, we end up in this place where our metabolism is affected, because our hormones are affected, because we have cortisol and we have adrenaline, and our sleep isn't good, so our cellular repair isn't good. And just the myriad of things that happen in our systems that affect that metabolism because of how we feel in a moment-to-moment way. And because all of us have grown up, one of my mentors says, the problem that most of us have is that we're raised in a family. And so when we look at the nervous system and how that's developed, mostly in the first 0 to 7 years, none of us had it perfect, right? And so if there wasn't this place of feeling fully safe and supported and authentic and all of that, we have this way that we operate in the world that is at sometimes a higher gear, right? And so the beauty and what we're learning so much about now is that these really very simple somatic body-based practices can help us kind of come into this awareness and use this as a roadmap to be able to be really simple micro practices can downshift the nervous system. And doing these for 2 to 3 minutes, 3 to 5 times a day, it's a huge game changer, because we're not only creating these moments, these little bubbles, these felt senses of, oh, wow, that's different, that's better. But they, stress accumulates, so do these. And they kind of plant and stick within. And with the practice, really, quite frankly, within a couple of weeks, when I'm usually working with people, there is a massive change, not only in the state of the moment, but in their overall trait of oh, I just operate in the world in a different way. And people respond to me differently. And so we have so much power and influence in how we can fundamentally change how we're feeling by doing some of these simple practices. And I think you're right that it's there's more and more awareness around this now, right? The body keeps the score, and so it's happening.
I just have a quick, can that help with your digestive system?
Absolutely.
So regulating your nervous system is completely related, of course. But yeah, it's not talked about so much.
No.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, how that happens?
Well, it's your gut is really your first brain. So when you're looking at settling your nervous system, you could speak more to like what happens with stress and the microbiomes and all that kind of stuff. But I just can tell you that your digestion shifts. So like when you're in fight flight, there is not time for that. There is no room for rest, digest, and befriend. So we end up shutting down, and then that slows your metabolism and cellular health and everything else. And I'll let you guys launch from that from a nutritional level, but I don't get into the nitty gritty of that part of it.
Well, I was just thinking about all the patients I need to send to you, because I would say stress is the biggest thing that gets in the way of gut healing. Like I can throw the best food, the best supplements, and if it's not working, usually it's a stress component, because if you think about it, you need to be in the relaxed place to even digest. Like the blood flow will be shunted away from the digestion system. So yeah, you don't absorb your nutrients, you don't poop.
Blood sugar goes up.
Yeah, and it impacts the microbiome. So it is probably the hardest thing to actually impact, but one of the most important things.
Yeah, and I think the thing is like, it's actually not that hard. If
I need to come to you.
It's actually, that's what's really exciting about it, right? Is like what we're learning about the ways that you can really just tap into the power and wisdom of your own system. And, I call these things these little be me breaks, these little baby breaks. And there's an ABC of the be me break. And the A is like the sense of alignment with yourself or attunement and paying attention to what feels good. B is like the body language of what you're doing and what you're saying to yourself, and some practice, maybe some breathing. And C is this check-in. And that's the important part, right? Because just like you can read, in Bessel van der Kolk's book, it'll say, oh, do yoga or do EMDR. And I think that the trick is not doing anything, but creating a different way to be with yourself, where it's like, oh, here I am, that's me, to have this direction of sense of like, that's what feels good to me. So we can really tune in. We create a felt sense of safety within our system in that. And that's the key, are these moments of really settling ourselves. And because they are a felt sense in the body, emotion, mental, and essence realms, it's so powerful to name and really feel that. And it's kind of like a treat. When I offer these to people, I'm like, it's not a to-do, it's really a ritual. It's really an invitation to yourself. And I don't have to pitch it very much because it really feels good to people. And it's very simple and it fits into your life. And so, yeah, game changer for, yeah.
Yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask is, can you give some examples of that type of thing, right? I understand, meditation, but when you're in the middle of your workday, what kinds of things can you do to calm your system a little bit so that it is working?
Yeah, so I would say that these are more body-based practices, which I say are like meditation on a supercharger. Because if you think about meditation, a lot of people really struggle with that because your mind is like a scared child trying to figure everything out, right? But once we get the whole team on board, then that can really feel helpful. So do you guys want to do a little practice? Okay, let's do it. All right. So let's see. Let's start with just this simple one that we can just do. It's just called a butterfly hug. So you're going to take your hands palm towards you, cross your thumbs, and that's just going to, try not to knock my microphone, land on your chest. And notice for yourself, like what feels right. Don't let yourself do anything, right? So if you want to sink into your chair, close your eyes if that feels right, or gaze at something that feels comfortable. As I offer this, know that there's no have to, so you really get to make it your own. Notice what's the just exact right amount of pressure for your hands to be on your chest. And because it's a butterfly, it has wings, and it's possible, if you want to play with this, that one of the wings gently lifts away from your chest and then lands back down. The other one might lift and land back down. And again, you get to notice the pace. You notice how much pressure it lands back down. So the whole point is not doing this, but tuning into like, that feels good to me. I like that. Sometimes the lifting of a hand can almost feel like a a little bit of abandonment, like you're leaving yourself. Some people prefer their hands to stay. If that's you, notice if it feels good to maybe curl your hand like a cat paw, like you're giving yourself a little massage or a pet. And just notice your preferences. Yeah. I'll talk in a minute about why this works, but we'll just have this experience here for a moment. And as you're there exploring a lift or a pet or just hands being still, if that's your choice, notice anything that happened in your body. Was there a sigh, a yawn, a tummy gurgle, a deeper breath, right? Did a smile come across your face? Shoulders let down, just a quick noticing. In the emotional realm, is there any more curiosity? Maybe not an emotion, but a sense of openness, lightness, whatever your words are. In the mental realm, is there any slowing? Less worry, judgment, more positivity, just tiny little shifts, just a bookmark. And finally, in the essence realm, just notice, wow, this is me. Like I am caring for myself. I have compassion for myself. I'm worth being here, noticing, attuning to. And then I'll just let you organically unwind out of that or stay in it if you like it. Yeah. Did you like that? Yeah. Yeah. And that's just one of many. And so when we're looking at these body-based practices, the reason that we're doing cross-body patterning is when you look at the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the brake on that sympathetic, the way it comes up through your system and all the information comes in, and as it comes up into your brain, it crosses sides. So things that are cross-body patterning, whether that's turning your head or contacting on opposite sides, that is a down regulator. So that's why we do that. But there's ways that we can layer all these different things together. But again, when I work with people, I offer, a variety of little practices, and then maybe there's like a go-to. This might be one if you're in the middle of a meeting that feels a little awkward. So there's ones that you could, do on your legs, or there's ones that involve your breath or simply turning your head. So there's a whole myriad of these that people can have their go-tos. And my all-time favorite is what I call authentic alignment. And it's if you want to go to the website, it's free. It's on the website. You can take a look at that practice about really coming into the body language of aligning with supporting the truth of who you are. So.
Thanks, Megan. I love that. And I think it just to recognize what it feels like to downregulate so you can re-access that is something that many of us have had to learn and still struggle with. Yeah.
Well, and I think that it might even be like, oh, I feel pretty good. So even if you're not really feeling in a heightened place, to be like, oh, that is a little easier. It's a little softer. It's a little better. So it's even just knowing that that's possible, I think, for one,
Certainly.
I feel like so many times we make choices, our own adult selves, that throw us out of our parasympathetic. You know what I mean? And so having the tools to be able to make the choice that we can choose to be in a different way
Yes.
is helpful.
It is. It really is.
Hi, I have two questions. One that's adjacent and one that's been discussed, and I just wanted to give some context. So, because you brought up GLP-1, I did it for 9 months. I am just in June. I'm now entering what they're calling the maintenance phase. So I'm drastically reducing the volume, and then taking it less frequently. What I found very successful, I lost weight. I started losing weight so fast it actually scared me, because I knew that I wasn't changing my lifestyle. So I actually scaled it way back. I took half the dose they told me to take, It took 9 months, it took longer, but I'm fine with that because I do believe I've changed my lifestyle. And how I did that was I only eat twice a day. I have a sensible breakfast and a sensible lunch, and I don't eat dinner anymore. And I learned quite a few things. Number one, I didn't need to eat anywhere near the amount of food I was eating. I have not felt hungry. Now, that could be the medicine. So as I'm going through this maintenance program, I'm hoping I'll continue to see that. I do occasionally have dinner if I have a happy hour or an evening out, but essentially I do not eat dinner. So I'm kind of doing that. I'm basically eating from 7 to noon, and then that's it. I don't eat any more during the day. And I haven't been hungry at all. I mean, not really at all. So I do feel like I've changed my lifestyle, hopefully, fingers crossed. So my questions are two things around that. I've gotten now into the habit of basically eating the same thing. I have the exact same thing for breakfast every day. Yogurt, Greek yogurt, strawberries and blueberries. That's it. Is there a risk of eating the same thing forever? Because I know our body can get used to some things, and then whatever the benefits were are no longer manifesting because it's just over and over and over again. So that's the first question. Should I mix it up? And then secondly, I'm 18 months into menopause, and I didn't know if there are any studies started or ongoing where GLP-1 can have an adverse effect on menopause-related issues. Being that it's kind of new, there may not be any data yet, but because menopause is literally taking over my life, I'm a little bit worried that maybe GLP-1 might have some adverse effects. I haven't noticed any, but it may have some knock-on effects later. So I just didn't know if there were studies out there about it.
Good questions.
I haven't heard, I don't know about menopause specifically with the GLP-1s. They kind of work on two different paths. But like we had mentioned earlier, menopause, of course, can impact your metabolism, right? And one of the beauties of the semaglutides and the GLP-1s is that it really does teach us how much do we really need to eat, because when you're 20 you can eat a plate that's like this, but you're burning it off and your metabolism's crazy, right? So you're coming into menopause with, oh, this is my normal portion size, right? And then all of a sudden the metabolism sort of falls off. So part of the GLP-1s, assuming you're not losing too much and you're at the maintenance phase now, is, wow, my portion doesn't have to be like this, it has to be like this, right? But I would caution, and Tara and Megan, I'm sure, could speak to this as well, when you're eating smaller portions, because that's what the medicine does, it makes you feel fuller sooner and your appetite is really squashed. So when you're eating really small meals and only twice a day, the same thing all the time, there's a concern, of course, that you might be missing some of your other nutrients, that you're not getting the balance that you need. And with the GLP-1s, part of our program here is we use the InBody to make sure that you're keeping your protein up and that you're keeping your muscle up, because you don't want to eat anything anymore. But also making sure that you're balancing everything out so that, check your vitamin D, check your B vitamins, check all of the hormones to make sure that you're optimal. Because there is a risk, of course, if you're not eating much, even though you feel like good for now, that you could cause some other issues. And even with the hormone issue in terms of osteoporosis, that's a really big deal. When we go through menopause, we lose our number one bone building hormone goes away. So then if you are compounding that with not having the muscle mass and the strength and the protein building blocks, that could impact a whole different system.
Yeah. In regards to that, because I've completely changed my body, I'm actually having blood work done later this month with my gyno. Because now we need to create the new baseline. And then in that, she said, because you're probably missing stuff now, that's when she'll determine, based on your blood work, you need these supplements in these quantities, or maybe new supplements because you're just eating less than before. But it's creating that new baseline with the blood work because my whole body has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay, well, thank
Tara, do
you.
you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, a few different thoughts. I think I'll be curious how you feel if and when you go off the medications, because I think the number one thing with any diet is you have to feel satiated and like it's sustainable long term. So if you start to feel hungry, I would challenge you to maybe try a different pattern where you can still maintain the calories you need, but not feel hungry or deprived. But it sounds like it's working well for you now. I think the risk sometimes of those 1 to 2 meal a day patterns is missing the opportunity for protein and micronutrients like you talked about. So definitely a risk with eating the same thing every day. There's some benefits. So they know that if people kind of eat roughly the same thing or bland meals, you have less of like a dopamine response to food and you tend to eat less calories. So that can be positive. But when we think about the gut microbiome and micronutrients, there's a lot of risks. So they know that the number one predictor of a healthy microbiome is how many plant species you eat a week. And 30 to 40 different species is what's recommended because all those different plants and plant fibers and polyphenols feed different healthy gut bugs, basically. And so if you're just eating broccoli, you're maybe feeding one species when you really want that diversity of species. And then it's really challenging to get enough micronutrients in the diet. We have to eat a lot of different colors, a lot of different nuts and seeds and different types of foods. So there's a way to do any kind of dietary pattern in a healthy way, but I think you might need to have more frequent testing and make sure that everything's optimized. And we do intracellular micronutrient panels. So, that might be interesting. I think when people are on GLP-1s and eating less, it's really helpful to kind of get a gauge and then do targeted diet and supplement strategies based on that.
I want you to speak to strength training as it relates to coming off of GLP-1s especially because it's so important. I do just want to say we have strong research around calorically restricted diets over time for women, especially postmenopausally, being very directly linked to cognitive decline, osteoporosis, and heart disease. And the reason really is you have to put enough Lego blocks in to build Lego towers every single day. As we, that's how I think about it, is as our body becomes more catabolic, it breaks down faster in the second half of our life. We have to put enough in to rebuild the tissue. If we don't rebuild the tissue and we don't have enough precursor for all the hormones, then the tissue dies. Literally, the tissue dies. So the research we have on very petite women through decades of eating like 800 calories a day is that they die in their 60s and early 70s. And that is because they fall and they break something and then it's always this phenomenon, you broke your wrist, you died. We don't understand it, but we do because they become sedentary and they don't have enough of that foundation. So when we're talking about caloric restriction, in a short term, it can be really helpful, but over the long term, you risk tissue death. And that's why when we are working with people on GLP-1s, we're really encouraging this transition that happens as we bring them to higher calories again. They're weaning off the medication, but they pair that with the strength training because it protects all those tissues and you can eat more. So why don't you talk about that?
Yes. So the one thing that I wanted to add in particular about strength training as you're, transitioning through into menopause is, GLP-1s aside, declining estrogen makes it very difficult for women to maintain their lean muscle. Their hot flashes, all the things. It's all good. It's all good. We're all, so
Pete's married, he knows, and the rest of us are women, so we're all in the same boat.
So that's, again, GLP-1s aside, declining estrogen starts happening in our mid-30s, and it makes it more and more difficult for us to naturally maintain and build our lean muscle as women. So that is one piece of it. So that's, again, we have the data, the in-body, you can do them. They have them here. It's such an easy test to monitor where you are. GLP-1 or not GLP-1s aside, perimenopausal age women. The thing that is I think one of the things that I wanted to share with this group is really understanding how the science and the knowledge of women in strength training, and this applies across the board, again, GLP-1s, declining estrogen, whatever it is, has really, understanding has really changed dramatically over the last 7 years. So gone are the days of cardio, or maybe we're doing HIIT with light weights at the various boot camp places around town. So Stacy Sims, Dr. Stacy Sims, she's a physical therapist, and she has really been at the forefront of understanding what it is that women need to do to maintain their lean muscle as their estrogen starts to decline. And it is not necessarily common knowledge how this has shifted. So we can stop literally the rat race on the treadmill and all of the, things that we maybe have done our whole lives that are actually depleting, and really focus on building the lean muscle through those progressive overload types of sets. So we're lifting heavy weights. I saw something in the airport with my sister, and she was like, well, is that an RPE 8? And I was like, well, they're going really fast and they're doing lots of reps. So no, that's not an RPE 8, but figure out what that programming needs to look like.
Tell us what an RPE 8 is.
Right.
We have to define acronyms.
I don't, yeah.
Sorry, rate of perceived exertion of an 8. So it's something, we talked about it with Pete, where you can lift it. So I like to talk about, deadlifts because it's a, multi-joint way of moving our body, but it's lifting enough weight that you could do 6 to 8 reps 4 times. But if you could lift a lot more than that, then it's not an RPE of 8, right? It means that there's probably 2 reps left that you could do when you're done with that set, okay? So it's really figuring out how to do the heavy weights and set aside some of those more intense cardio, even if they have weights with them, right? I think there is a confusion around what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying set aside the very light weights, high reps. I don't know, it feels like hamster on a treadmill to me. But setting those things aside so that we can focus on the heavy resistance. There is a place for cardiovascular work, in particular sprint intervals, which are very high intensity intervals, but you don't do them very often, like once a week and not for a long period of time. And then also making sure that there's the plyometric component so that we're increasing, our bone health, and we're hitting all of those different ways of training. So I'm going to say that applies across the board.
So do you mean jumping exercises when you say plyometrics?
Yes. So jumping types of exercises, and that can be lots of different, it can be definitely tailored to the individual as to what's appropriate for.
Is a trampoline a real thing that help with bone density, jumping on a trampoline, or is that a fad?
I'm going to say no. To
you want
me,
impact?
personally, yes, I would not say jumping on a trampoline. My acupuncturist said jump on a trampoline, but that was for a whole different, no, just for, I think it was actually, she was helping me with my feet. There is a place and time for a trampoline, but no.
With bone density and muscle building.
No, because you need the impact, right? That's over time, you need that impact. So did I answer?
The ads trying to sell me.
Yeah.
You don't need a trampoline.
Did I answer the question about GLP-1s?
Yeah, so while you're on a GLP-1, you want to be strength training.
Yes.
While you're easing off, you really want the strength training,
Yes.
because over time, if you don't eat enough food, your body depletes. But I do think the other thing we haven't said that we need to make sure we say is GLP-1s for men and women increase your risk of osteoporosis if you don't eat enough food and you're not eating enough protein. If you then add to that estrogen depletion, you have a high risk of osteoporosis. So when you go back to the doctor and you say, how am I doing, doc? They better be ordering a bone density scan, and it should be your baseline, and then you should be doing it every couple of years, and hormone replacement therapy, and protein, and strontium, and a couple of things will protect your bones. But this is where we really can get ourselves in trouble if we don't have this nailed and tailored correctly.
And fairly quickly within that window,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
So
within the
like
first few
within
years.
the first year of going through menopause, that is like the key window when you dramatically drop bone density and lean muscle. So you're in the thick of it. And just it sounds like you're monitoring, but just making sure that monitoring those things. And we're so fortunate in this day and age to have so many things that we can do to sort of keep a tab on where we are and use that data.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Stacy Sims.
Yeah.
And that was my big question. I listened to her, and she was talking. I understood it to say that you needed to leave reps in reserve when you're over kind of 60 years old. And is that RPE 8?
So
is
right,
that
so
what you're
that
saying?
would be like an RP. So it's so confusing. But like 2 reps in reserve would be an RPE of 8. Does that make sense?
So the RPE of 8 is each time you I can't remember what's a rep and what's a whatever.
So she's saying you want, I mean, and I don't know where you saw what the topic was, but was she saying you want 1 or 2 reps in reserve, but you're lifting heavy enough so that you could only do 1 or 2 more reps after your set?
And so reps versus set.
Yeah.
That's
So-
the question.
yeah.
So am I going to do 8 if
So
I
a
can
rep
do 8
versus
4
a-
times?
So you're
and with 2 in reserve, or do I push, and at the end of the set I need to leave 2?
So let's talk about the trap bar deadlift, okay? And let's say I programmed for you, you're going to do 4 sets, and each set is going to have 6 reps, okay? So a set is how many you're doing in each interval. Does that make sense?
Stand
Did I
up
just
and
say
show
that's
us.
wrong?
Okay, stand up.
So here I am.
Lee,
I'm going to do my trap bars.
6 reps. Show me.
So 6 reps would be literally 6 of 1, 2, 3, right? That's 6. I'm going to count to 6. 4, 5, and 6.
And do you have 2 reps in reserve now, or do you?
Yes.
Okay.
That's when you would want your reps in reserve. And then you're going to shake out your legs, and you're going to wait, and you're going to give your body 2 to 4 minutes to totally recover. It's going to feel like you are just wasting time at the gym. Check your phone. Maybe don't check your phone. Depends on what you're listen to your podcast. Do a meat beat. Yeah. Hey, look, we could be. So you're gonna literally just give yourself 2 to 4 minutes, and then you're gonna go back and you're gonna do 6 more. Okay, maybe you added some more depending on what your program said you should do. Okay, so you're gonna add more. You're gonna do 6 more. Okay, 6, 6, 6. Okay, then you're gonna stop. You're gonna have 2 reps in reserve. You're gonna do to 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, and then you're gonna do a 3rd set, same thing, and a 4th set, same thing. Does that make sense?
All the same way.
Well, that's going to depend on what your coach has said in there, right? So you want to warm up, right? And you want to make sure that typically your sets would potentially add small amounts, okay, as you're moving through your workout. Not always, depends on how much you're lifting, but ultimately the goal is that you're building strength over time, right? So just like if we eat the same thing every single day, right? We're not changing our micronutrients, we're limited in some way. If we lift the same way, the same weights every single time, then our body also doesn't change and adapt. So that's ultimately the crux of professionally designed programming is we change something. It could be the tempo, it could be the weight, it could be, instead of doing a trap bar deadlift, I'm going to do a kettlebell deadlift, and it's going to work my body in a slightly different way. Does that make sense? But just like we don't want to eat the same food every single time because there's so many other things that we can gain, we don't want to lift our weights the same way or do the same exercise every single time. We need that variety so that our body can continue to adjust and adapt and grow and get stronger.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on this.
Okay,
6 times.
6 times.
I have 2 reps in reserve.
Yes.
Which means if I were to do 2 more reps, I would die. Is that it? What are my 2 reserved reps for?
Your 2 reserved reps are for, because you're not, like, also in the airport, we saw the power lifter, right?
Okay.
Who was
I'm gonna
doing a 1 rep max.
I'm going to use 8 and 2 because I want to use percentages.
Yes, okay.
Are
Oh,
you
boy.
saying?
Are we going to math the math?
We're going to
Megan?
math the math. We're going to math. So I want to make sure. I don't know if you're clear. I'm a little not clear, and I got to work out in the morning. So if I do 8 I could do 10, but
Yes,
I'm only doing 8.
that's right.
But if I did 10, I'd be like,
That's it.
oh, that was too much.
Yes,
It was like,
that's correct.
Okay. And then,
That's correct.
So you have the energy to do it again. Is that what you're saying?
okay, so that's my 20% is my that would really max me out. So
That
I'm
would
gonna
really
do,
max you out.
Okay, so you
Yes.
have to kind of learn that.
You have to
And then
kind
you're
of
gonna
learn that.
kick around and
You have to
do
just
a beanie,
figure out
and then
with
you're
your-
going to do the same thing.
But maybe you're going to
and-
add some more weight because you're
Okay, I'm
all
gonna
warmed
add-
up.
yeah.
And you're like, wait, that wasn't actually, I did have more than 2 reps in
Okay.
reserve.
What if you're
so-
the person that gets through 2 sets and you're like, so bored right now? Can you just do 2 sets?
No,
You
No,
can't
you
just
cannot
do
just do 2 sets.
16?
no. Because if you could do 16, it's going to be a way lighter weight.
Well, I could leave 4 in reserve.
No, it doesn't work that way.
All right, kids, we have to do 4 entire sets of everything.
3 to, I mean, it depends on your programming, right? What if your rep count was 8 and you only did 3 sets of 8? So it's going to look a little different. And it's okay. It's good that it looks a little different. It can't always be the same. But you can't just do 16 because there's no way that you're lifting heavy enough weight if you do 16 reps.
I have a hack in case you're as bored as I am. As it turns out, we disagree here, but I actually think listening to podcasts while you work out is so boring. Especially if it's like functional medicine, where I'm like, I know.
Oh, come on. Well, but what about Mel?
Or Mel, I'm like, I know Mel. I think you have to put on your music that like reminds you of when you were fun. And then you have to jam.
You know what?
And then I want to do at least 3 sets.
At least 3,
Okay.
but 4. So you could do 3 of some things.
You have to make it fun.
Okay, turn on the music and dance with your goats, and it's going to be great. So again, it depends on what it is that you know, how you can get yourself. We both work out in our garage. I do own a beautiful gym, but I work out in my garage because I have kids and dogs and all the other things. Finding what works for you to get out there and do it, you know. And the one thing that I do want to say is that it doesn't need to be, this is not a 60-minute commitment, okay? It does not need to be like, I'm out there forever, right? But probably 30 minutes, 3 times a week, okay? So, but that's manageable. Just set your clock, just go and you can do it. 30 minutes, 3 times a week.
I can when I listen to 90s hip hop.
I want to add one thing.
Yes, please.
And I'm a big fan.
Yes.
And I'm going to pitch for like having some help like this, because I see the people as a physical therapist that come in that have done these things because they think they're supposed to, and the quality of it is poor. And it's so critical. And when I've worked with people, and they're like, oh, I'm doing all these weights, and you look at changing the quality of that, really looking at like, how do you do a squat? Like I say, like most people do not know how to do a squat, right? And so if you really look at the quality, what's heavy might actually be less than what you thought, right? Right. Yeah. So like to really have somebody who knows what they're doing, and not just like being like, oh, whatever her name is, that I should do 4 sets of this thing, and kind of making it up on your own. I would get somebody who knows what they're doing to.
You want
give
eyes
some
on
guidance.
you.
Yeah.
You want eyes on you, at least for a while.
I noticed too, my husband got a whole new set of weights, and we have it we have a little weight room with a Peloton, and it's not that big. But I'm the type of person, if I don't have a routine, I haven't used them. Like I'll get on the Peloton, but I want to know how many I'm doing and what weights, where my husband can just be standing there and he'll do all this stuff, but I'm so different. Like I won't do it because I want to do it right. Just like when we'd go to the gym, he can just roam around in there, but I need a class. Like that's how different, you know, I can't just roam around and do certain weights because I don't, if I'm not doing it right, it's not going to benefit.
You're going to get a whole lot more out of it if you're doing it properly.
Well, yeah.
1,000%.
So.
And that's such a good point, speaking to metabolism as a whole. I don't create my own nutrition protocols. I just can't see myself I can't see myself objectively, and I think it's nice to have people that can stand back and see you objectively, whether it's your exercise, your nutrition, whatever you're working on in your health, and have some perspective on it and create a plan. Because without the plan, we have a lot of information coming into us. I don't know if any of y'all are on the Tick and the Talk and the Instagram and the CNN and the NPR and the whatever else you're on. It's a lot of information every day that we're trying to filter through and do the right thing, but the right thing might be different for each one of us, right?
Yeah. And yeah, the importance of having a team in place, and who's on that team, and how are we helping to synthesize information as it's relevant to each individual person. You know, I mean, I think we're so lucky to have, you know, experts who can really guide and be there to answer the questions and help support, you know, whether it's like, hey, what did you think about this workout on TikTok, or ChatGPT told me this. Well, it's nice to have that real life person who can, you know, be there with accountability and, you know, just I don't know, answer the questions, have the resources, and it's great to have a great team in place. So yes.
Yeah, I
Don't
love
walk
having
around
my
with your-
hand held through everything. I've worked with you.
Yes.
That's how I work best. But then what happens when you don't? Like, what happens when you stop something? I know I've stopped a little bit, and then I feel like I always like to be accountable to somebody when I'm working through these things. And how do you stay on track? I mean, you want to get a routine going and doing it for a while, but most people don't do it forever, like with a trainer or something like that. But
I mean,
or
I
maybe
would
you
argue.
can.
I would argue the contrary. I
Okay.
I will tell you, we have people. I mean, here's what my husband would say to anybody. After you work out with one of our trainers, you should be set. Like after 6 months, you could do it yourself. But whether you want to or not is a whole nother thing. Does that make sense? So he actually still trains his very first client in Portland. He's 53. He was 28 when he started training her. So he's trained this woman, and twice a week she's come in. And that's really what a lot of times we do find. Some people come and go, and they get the empowerment and the knowledge and the skills to do it on their own. But they like the community. They like having a third place to go besides their office and their home, where they, somebody greets them when they walk in, and they like that. And so that's a possibility. The other thing is that, with so much different technology, like it's also, maybe you work with a trainer one-on-one to help have the eyes on the form so you understand it. And maybe you do like that long-term, but there's also, an app option where you still have the programming and you know what it is that you're supposed to do, and there's still a live person that's accountable on the other end. And I'm just speaking to what we offer. So there is also that option too, where maybe you don't need the one-on-one, maybe you want the one-on-one, but there is an option. I'm a big fan of designed programming. I have another person put my programming in the app. Like I could write my own programs, but I don't. And I know that if I didn't do that, if I didn't invest in that I would go out and I would do the same thing every day. Everything I told you not to do, I would totally do that. Because I need that somebody else putting the thought around it. And so that's the time that I can go out and I can listen to my podcast and do my boring sets that are building strength. Does that make sense?
Then she tells me what I should listen to. What other question? Oh, go ahead, Megan.
I just think that kind of around that, like you're saying, like people choose to, I think there's a big piece around when you talk about even nervous system, like one of the foundational things is connection, right? And so connection and community, and that's really important. But I think empowerment is also important. So like everybody's different in understanding like, oh, I got these things, and now I'm gonna go from going twice a week to maybe now I'm gonna come like once a week, and then I'll come once every 2 weeks. So like that's, depending on who you're working with or what, that might make a lot of sense. So I think you're not stuck in anything, but just kind of really work organically with somebody who, is there for you. And when you want to come back in, you've got that. So, yeah.
What other questions do you have? Has anybody not had a chance to ask a question? No, go ahead. Yeah, hit us.
Part of the Stacy Sims thing I was listening to was about stress for 60-year-olds post-menopause, and that the too much weight was stressing the body. Cold plunges were not advised for older women, some of those kinds of things. So is it more individuated, or is there more decade by decade? Because the program was about women in different decades needing different things and responding differently.
I did see Stacy said no cold plunging for the ladies. Did you see
know
that?
how thankful I was for that?
Yeah.
I mean,
I love it.
What I'm going to say is what is going to be the answer on this panel. Megan loves the cold plunge. I hate the cold plunge. She likes the cold plunge. There's a lot of science that says cold plunge is good, but there's also maybe it is too much stress, So I think it is individuated, and also have your team and talk to them about what is right for you. Does that make sense? Like, I know Megan loves the cold plunge.
Well, I used to love the cold plunge, but there were times in my life, and I think Megan should speak to this, other Megan should speak to this, because there were times in my life where I was doing it because I thought it was the thing I was supposed to do, and it felt horrible, and I felt like crap. And it would take me like 8 hours to warm up, and I'd, sit in there like 2.5 minutes, but I think I'm dying. And then there are times where it feels like the right thing to do. And so maybe speak a little bit to where our bodies can be in overall pressure, stress, resilience, and then the additional pressure we put on.
Absolutely. Like I'm not a fan of the should ever.
Great, love
right?
that.
And I think when you're looking at, again, like stress is cumulative. So if you're already at a place of feeling high stress and vulnerable, and then you add this on top of it, that can feel like too much. So I think, again, the idea of attuning to yourself and sensing like, this, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it for like 30 seconds. I'm going to listen to myself when it feels like, that feels like enough. I'm going to get out, or I'm not going to do it today. Like allow yourself choices, you know, not like it has to be rigid and the same all the time. But you know, I think that, you know, anything that says like, well, if you're 60, you shouldn't do this. And if you're, you know, because I think you could speak more to like, where are people in their, you know, their actual age, and what do you call it, like their biological age?
Yeah,
right?
I'm attuned to that this week. Yes, I just
so-
got my test back.
Okay, so I think that it's different, and it's hard to kind of follow protocols that aren't really specific to like, who are you as an individual, what are all the aspects and all the pieces. So
I want to say one more thing about the Stacey Sims thing, because I'm like noodling on what you're talking about. So I've read her books, I've done her menopause course, and here's what I can tell you, my interpretation, and this is going to help you figure out what we're talking about with what should 60-year-olds do and the things. My interpretation, my professional interpretation of the programming that she was providing in that course, I looked at it and I was like, that is way too much. Like, it was way too intense for what I would consider general population that we would serve in our gym. So that's, you know, the sample size that I would work with. So when I talk about her concepts, those concepts can still be applied without talking about the specifics of what she is programming. Does that make sense? So perhaps, because my interpretation of what I was like, okay, I can understand the concepts, but if I'm looking at what she's written down is this workout right here, it's way too intense. Like, so does that help with, you know, perhaps where she's calibrating that back for the different decades? You know, I've already calibrated it in my brain for what is an appropriate exercise plan, applying those concepts for a 60-year-old. Does that make sense? Okay.
Does anybody else have questions that they haven't had a chance to ask?
I'm coming from a different slant. I'm a young 70-something person, and over the last few years, so many different medical problems have taken me away from everything that a lot of people here are able to do. So I guess if I could just have a few comments about when you are struggling with an immune systems type situation and a lot of medical problems, and you're older and osteoporosis and all of those things, how to help your metabolism and to become stronger. I'm slowly trying to work my way back, and it's a harder path than I had expected, because I was very healthy, exercised all the time, did all sorts of things when I was up until my 70s. So
I love this question, Susan, and I think this is this is something we really have to cover around listening to your body and meeting it where it is, right? So who wants to start? Because I know you all have something to say about this.
I do.
Okay,
I'll start.
Carol.
I'll start. I would say, coming from the Western medicine perspective and then coming to the functional medicine perspective, my number one key concept is knowledge is power. So often, when we finally go to the doctor and we finally say something, we're feeling terrible, right? Like the wheels have fallen off the cart. We feel awful. We don't know why. And we go and we want somebody to say, wave the magic wand, or here's a pill, this is what's going on, take the pill and, you know, get better. So the way that we approach things, we have so many more tools in our toolbox to be able to look outside that Western medicine perspective, so that you can learn what your body is telling you, even if it's not speaking very loudly. But you can look from the biomarkers, from the blood tests, you can look and see, gosh, you just kind of get in touch, like Megan was saying, get in touch with connect your brain with your body. And we are not taught how to do that in Western medicine at all, right? we're just not taught that. And I would say, just from a little personal anecdote, I was going through a really stressful time and was having some gut issues. And I was like, I have like a rock solid gut. I've never had issues with my gut before. What the heck is happening? And I would just get kind of gurgles and crampy. And I was like, only episodically. So I said, something's not right. Like I just don't want to live like this. I don't know what's going on, but something's not right. So I called a gastroenterology office and I said, okay, can you help me figure this out? Well, do you have blood in your poop? Are you feverish? And I'm like, no. I mean, it's very episodic. And they said, well, we don't really deal with that. Huh. Okay. Well, I said, who can help me with this? Well, why don't you call an allergist? So I called the allergist and I said, this is what's going on. Can you help me with this? Well, if you don't have hives, I'm like, well, okay, something's not right. Something's not going well here, something. So I kind of took a wild guess. This is way before functional medicine, right? So I took a wild guess and I made an appointment with a registered dietitian who also happened to be a naturopath. And I said, okay, I don't really know what's going on, but something's going on. So that conversation, now all of a sudden I have these extra tools. Well, there's some food sensitivity testing. That is not even in the Western medicine toolbox. Nobody talks about that at all, right? Well, there's some food sensitivity things that we can do. There's this whole toolbox to approach that, and I had my answer. It turns out that I was really sensitive to dairy. Had no idea. I was like a 3 glass a day drinking milk. No idea. And then had this testing. I was like, oh my gosh. Cut out the dairy, symptoms resolved. I was just amazed. I was like, how is that something so simple? But coming from the tools, it's the knowledge is power. If you're curious and you ask and you look beyond kind of what is the traditional approach so that you can get access to some of these tools so you can see what's going on. Whoever tests vitamin D levels or vitamin B12 levels, that does not happen in Western medicine. It's not relevant, right? So knowledge is power. If you're not finding the answers that you, from your provider team, look beyond, look outside the box, try it on and see what happens, you know? Maybe you'll discover that you've got a dairy allergy and now your gut is magically better because you are avoiding dairy. But again, it's just kind of a long way of saying knowledge is power. Seek other providers, seek people who have specialties in different areas so that you can kind of get to the root. Functional medicine is all about finding the root cause, not putting a Band-Aid on it, not putting a pill on something. Find the root of what is the base of the whole thing, and then you can move in a positive direction.
I would say too, I work with a lot of people with like very complex chronic illness and they don't have any energy. So if I were to tell them like, you just need to exercise, like that's offensive, not helpful. That's not where they are in their healing journey. So I think it's really like leaning into what's working and what are the opportunities to nourish yourself. So if you are able to walk, how do we kind of maximize that? Or if you are able to have like a liquid smoothie, how do we get the most like nutrient absorption from that? So I think it's kind of focusing on the strengths and then trusting that your organism will develop more strength and then you can take more on at a different time. But I think there's something nice about just like accepting where you are and leaning into what's working. Great. I'm so curious to talk to you. Perfect.
One thing that I would say is just, again, we have so many different ways to use data. So for sure, just trusting where you are, but also leaning into, some of the different wearable technology that can track your, recovery. So like you actually, sometimes it's like, wow, I'm really feeling tired. And then I wear an Oura ring I have for almost 5 years, and it has been so interesting for me to watch sort of the recovery from different activities, like whether you have a high step count day or, it's too much. And your HRV is going to tell you the next day. And then you're like, okay, so maybe instead of whatever you did, you just dial it back until your body can adjust more, sort of naturally and organically. Because it's using technology and data that we have through blood tests and InBody to be supportive in how we can continue to grow and evolve and just be sort of really, I don't know, just strong and resilient.
I would say, this is not an uncommon thing, right? So you go through something, and then it's like there's almost like this shift in your identity, and you're like, that's not as, I'm not recovering like I think that I should, and I ought to be better, and then you look perfectly healthy. So it's kind of like women who have had breast cancer, and like there's still so much happening and so much stress about will it get better and all of these big pictures, and so I think to, like you're saying, like to really give yourself space and to attune to that, and to be careful about the fixing of all of the things, and really sensing into how can you support yourself in your nervous system, in your diet, and in your exercise, but to really, trust in yourself to sense in like, this feels right for me, and to give yourself the space and to listen. And I think, again, when you're looking at any kind of immunity stuff, you have to look at like what's happening for you in a nervous system perspective. So, yeah, it's a great question. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Eric. Awesome. I'm excited. You've been holding it in this whole time.
I was just thinking about this. This might be off the beaten path, but I think, Lee, we were maybe even talking about this a little bit. It has to do with like dopamine. And I'm wondering, are you guys running into that? Like, how are you approaching it? Meditation is something I do now religiously. And do you test for dopamine levels? And one of the reasons why I might not go back into some of the stuff that I'm doing is because I'm exposed to a lot of social media. And it's a lot of on and off and on and off of dopamine levels. And I'm just wondering, what are you guys seeing and how are you approaching it, and do you test for it? Like dopamine levels.
I love that question, and I'm not going to answer any of it, but what I am going to say is when we look at a lot of the things that can derail our health, it tends to be around the chase for dopamine hits, right? And we're doing it from day one in our life, right? We are hardwired to have a increase in dopamine with pleasurable things. So when we think about all these things that can potentially derail our metabolism, which can be watching TV, doing social media, even, and I will tell you, this is my self-admitted realization this year in my midlife of saying like, I have the best life and I'm so mad all the time. What the heck? Realizing that I have let so many things into my life, like I love this place and I love work, but you can overdo anything when you're looking for the hit. And there's a dopamine hit with work. There's a dopamine hit with bad things and good things. And I think I'm going to turn it over to you guys, but I'm so glad you brought this up because I think so much of our behavior subconsciously is driven by looking for that. And we aren't armed with as many tools as we could be armed with to recognize that and then satisfy it differently. Why don't I start on this side and we'll go back? And I know GLP-1s, there's a large connection there. So hit us on this side and we'll go all the way back through.
I think that, when you're talking about chasing anything, we're so used to, like you're saying, just trying to like do something to feel better. And to really, I think that so many of us are out of practice or maybe never knew how to have a sense of comfort in just being versus doing. And that becomes a real practice. And noticing how we can feel safe and regulated and present and not feel like we constantly have to be reaching for things. And that, again, comes from that place of trying to cultivate safety within yourself. So,
love that. I'm going to answer a testing question. Eric, in a minute, you go ahead.
I don't feel like I have a lot to add other than to just say, we do things that we make ourselves crazy. You know what I mean? Like we talked about before, it's like choosing the thing that is going to allow us to be downregulated and overriding the, oh my gosh, I better just log in and just see what what is the philosophy? What does it look like today on Instagram? You know what I mean?
Followers do we have?
There must be something that I need to check, right? That's figuring out how we can be in our lives so that we're just making those other choices.
And I think kind of just one thing I'd add to that is I always frame things and asking like, who needs to do that? Like when we think about ourselves, like what part of me needs that validation, that, you know, whatever it is, why we're chasing that, and to kind of really start to look more internally at like how, you know, this has been wired in what you call like the through line of your life, of your nervous system. And so if we can have compassion for the part of ourselves that feels like, oh, well, I'm only going to be loved if I get everything done, you know, so really looking at how do we heal ourselves in a way that we feel solid and safe and whole, and that takes us really kind of listening and what I call being the superhero of our own lives, of really showing up and sensing in and being attuned and sensitive and compassionate for ourselves when there's these habits of things that we do. So, yeah.
We typically don't test dopamine because it changes so much throughout the day and the night and the everything else. But there's a phenomenal test that you can do that was created by Dr. Eric Braverman. It's called the Braverman test. And it feels like you're taking a personality test, so just beware. But it's a it's a two-part, so you can literally go to bravermantest.com, and it asks you questions, and these assess your baseline neurotransmitters, where you feel the best at this balance. You might be a high GABA, you might be a high dopamine, you might be a high serotonin. It's sort of like how you came into the world, your special sauce. The second half of the test is where you are today. And the nice thing about this offering, and I believe he's a Harvard doc, if I'm remembering correctly, is that if your GABA in your nature is a 30 and your GABA today is a 6, you're like, wah, no wonder I feel the way I feel, right? And so then he gives all of this evidence-based data about how to bring your GABA back up. What are the foods? What are the supplements? What are the activities that can rebalance you? Because again, we're not all the same. We're not all as dependent on GABA. Some of us are serotonin junkies. So that is something that I actually have patients do. And way back before I was at BioLounge, I had a woman I was working with at a tennis club where I was the nutritionist, and she said, I get home at 4 o'clock from work, and 5 minutes later, my teenage sons walk in, and they're just jerks right now. They're such jerks. And the second they walk in the kitchen, I just start eating chips. I can't help it. I just can't stop it. I'm like eating chips to try and deal with the fact that they're in the house. And I said, I get that. Is there anything else you do that makes you feel that same feeling as eating chips? Because what she was articulating to me was a dopamine spike. And she said, the only thing that makes me feel that way is when I talk to my best friend on the phone. And I said, oh, interesting. How's your availability of your best friend these days? And would it be possible for you to call her every single day at 4 p.m.? For a minute, for a week, for 2 weeks, right? Can you replace the feeling? And so then I saw her 2 weeks later, and I said, so what's going on? And she said, well, as it turns out, if I hide in the closet at 4 p.m. every day and I call my best friend, I don't eat chips. And I was like, brilliant. But I know even in my own life, I want to, and I'll just tell you all the dirty laundry, I want to sit down with my husband and have a glass of wine at 7 p.m. when, everything's done. But my body doesn't want me to sit down and have a glass of wine every day at 7 p.m. as it turns out. So I had to really sit with myself and say, what makes me feel dopamine? And what can I do to connect? Because that's working against my health. What can I do to connect with him? And it turns out it does involve hanging out with the goats. That's just the thing, that's the thing. So I do think we have to attend to that, and we do have to ask we're very individual in what brings us that lift. And if you're really interested in getting geekier, read Dopamine Nation, because you get a lot of good information there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's always like a biochemical kind of thing you can think about. So when we think about neurotransmitters, usually it's protein breakdown products, amino acids, and then micronutrients that help you produce it. So I think with dopamine, it's like tryptophan, B6. Yep. So we can think about if you're burning a lot of dopamine, you might need more support with those things. But I think what Megan said is most important, and we think about like ultra-processed foods or social media, they're engineered to cause this huge dopamine spike. And then it can make like the simple pleasures feel like you just get a little bit less of a spike. So of course you're gonna go to the things that create that huge spike. And so I think it's like what Megan said, retraining yourself to have these pleasures that are more health promoting or meaningful or relationship based or nature based, as you wean off some of those cheaper thrills that we're all vulnerable to.
I would just say my little sliver of experience with the dopamine and the GLP-1s. So the semaglutides. It's really fascinating because it seems the semaglutide seems to impact the dopamine receptors in the brain. So a lot of people who reach for comfort foods, we've all heard about that, right? You just want to have that cupcake, or you have those chips, or whatever. Because because that feels good. It just gives me that little hug. It just gives me, and the semaglutide, it just kind of nixes that altogether. So you go and you reach for your cupcake because you want that little dopamine hit, and if you're on the semaglutide where that receptor is saturated, you don't get that hit anymore, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't even really want the cupcake or the glass of wine or the whatever it is. Fascinating. So it can be a really interesting tool to just help you recognize what those pieces are. And a cautionary note is that because it does impact the dopamine receptor, there is a chance that if you're on the semaglutides or on the GLP-1s for a long period of time, because that dopamine is suppressed, that you actually can get clinical depression. Because that is constantly sort of tamped down. So there is some evidence out there that you can get really depressed and you can feel suicidal, and it's not very common, but I would say it is a chance, it's a risk, it's a something. So the semaglutide is doing something with that dopamine. There's no direct way to really measure it, but it can be a really effective tool to just help you put those pieces together, get that knowledge. What are those dopamine hitters, especially food-wise, that you can have an insight to, like Megan was saying, like, oh, I can just talk to my friend instead of grabbing the chips.
In the closet every single day at 4 p.m., hiding from your naughty teenagers.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing about that? So dopamine is also kind of what helps us learn, have habit formation. So you think about all these things are habit forming. And I think a mistake people often make when they're making these lifestyle and health changes is like sucking all the pleasure and joy out of life. So anytime you're trying to make a diet change or an exercise change, you have to have it be fun, and there has to be some joy and pleasure, or else you will not sustain it. So I would just say, try to make it enjoyable.
Thank you for saying that. We always say your food should taste really, really good. If you suck the pleasure out of food, you're not going to stick with anything. But I think that goes, you're right, it goes for really every aspect of our health, our metabolism. You have to love it. You have to want to do it, or it's a short spurt, right?
Yeah.
It's a yo-yo. We've all been there, done that with all of our behaviors, I'm sure, and it's hard to stick to something that isn't fun, isn't pretty, doesn't look nice, Lots of colors, lots of pleasure, lots of
Flavor.
connection with people, Yeah. I had a kid say to me, he had a bunch of gut issues, and we put him on a therapeutic nutrition plan for a while to try and help his symptoms, and he got really connected to it, and he came in and he said, well, my dad wants me to come up for Easter, and I can't control the macros, and I can't control this and that. And I said, oh honey, he's 30 but feels really young to me. I said, oh honey, okay, you got to go to Easter. Yeah, he's not 12. You got to go to Easter. This is, we can't decide that this is so important that we lose all the other stuff that is regulating our nervous system, that is keeping us strong, that is all of it. Because we actually, to be well in the long term, we have to have it. We have to have it all in varying levels, right? Not every day, throughout our life. Did we miss anything? Does anybody have a burning question they didn't get to ask? Thank you so much for coming and being part of this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Good. This is our favorite stuff to do, you guys. We, and I can speak for everybody, even if they're not part of Bio Lounge, that what gets us up in the morning and what we text each other about and what we send each other over email is the things that we're geeking out about that we know might be important to all of you. And being able to just hang out with you and answer questions is the best part. So we will have more of these. Jeff is going to do a virtual AMA next month. What's he talking about?
Hormones.
Hormones.
His favorite topic.
Yep.
It'll be great.
I think it'll be on a Friday, right?
Friday
Is that
at
what you're thinking?
2, the last Friday in July. We'll send
Awesome.
something out soon.
So we hopefully we'll be having an AMA of some sort every month, live and virtual mixed, and then get ready and be waiting for your invitation to our grand reopening when we punch this wall out and open up our second space, or our extended space. We're really excited to be able to see you more often and serve more of you. So we're here for you. We're all here for you. And when we send out the video, we will send everybody's contact information too if you feel like you want to get a hold of anybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.